This episode is sponsored by Ledger, the world's most trusted hardware wallet. If you hold crypto, protect it like you mean it. Get your Ledger today using the link in the description. Now, let's go back to the week the financial world cracked. It's September 2008, a chill Monday morning in Manhattan. Screens glow red across trading floors. Phones ring without stopping. Men in tailored suits speak in code because they know the unthinkable is happening. The global financial system, that quiet machine under everything, is breaking. That weekend, Lehman Brothers collapsed. A 158-year-old investment bank gone. Within hours, markets froze. Hedge funds couldn't roll financing. Money market accounts, the place where corporations park cash overnight, started to wobble. By Tuesday, the conversation wasn't about profits anymore. It was about survival. For decades, the story had been simple. Banks were safe, regulators were competent, and central banks could always step in. But when the housing bubble burst, $1 trillion of safe debt turned toxic. Derivatives, complex financial weapons built on top of mortgages, spread the damage through every major institution. Most people didn't understand what a credit default swap was. They didn't need to. They just knew that suddenly, the bank they trusted for a lifetime might not open tomorrow. On the evening of September 15th, 2008, Lehman's headquarters emptied into the street. Employees carried out cardboard boxes under camera lights. Some smiled numbly, others stared ahead, hollow. The financial system had just lost its anchor tenant. That week, the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 777 points in a single day, the largest point drop in history at the time. Credit markets seized. Even healthy companies couldn't borrow short-term cash to fund operations. Governments scrambled. Meetings went late into the night in Washington, Frankfurt, London. The Federal Reserve and Treasury proposed a $700 billion bailout, sold as a necessary firewall to stop complete collapse. Congress balked. Then the stock market fell another 800 points. Congress approved it. Money was conjured, not printed, not minted. Conjured by ledger entries at central banks. It worked, sort of. Markets stabilized, but something deeper had broken. Belief. For a few months, the world held its breath. By early 2009, the global economy was officially in recession. Millions lost homes. Millions more lost jobs. Banks got bonuses. The people who caused the crash got hearings. The people who paid for it got slogans. And then, quietly, on January 3rd, 2009, a line of code appeared on an obscure mailing list. It carried a timestamp and a message burned into history, the Times, 3rd of January 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. The Genesis block of Bitcoin. No one knew who wrote it. The name on the white paper was Satoshi Nakamoto, a pseudonym. Maybe one person, maybe several. But whoever it was had watched the same news everyone else did and came to a radical conclusion. If money can be rewritten by policy, maybe money itself needs to be rewritten by math. Bitcoin's design was small, elegant, almost naive. A peer-to-peer network where transactions didn't need banks, didn't need trust, didn't even need identities. Every 10 minutes, the network produced a new block of transactions. Every block made it harder to change the past. Every computer running the code could see the full ledger. 21 million coins, no central authority, no bailouts. If the old system was trust, then verify, Bitcoin inverted it. Verify, then trust. At first, nobody cared. The forums were ghost towns. The few who did pay attention were cryptographers, libertarians, and digital privacy enthusiasts. They'd seen previous attempts, eCash, Hashcash, BitGold, all fail. But this time felt different. Because this time, the world was ready for a rebellion. In early 2009, the BBC ran nightly specials on unemployment and foreclosure. People watched bankers testify about systemic risk while their own mortgages imploded. Protesters marched with signs reading, "Where's my bailout?" Governments responded with quantitative easing, a polite phrase for printing money electronically. The U.S. Federal Reserve's balance sheet exploded from $800 billion to over $2 trillion within months. Interest rates dropped to zero. For ordinary savers, it was silent punishment. Cash earned nothing. Asset prices inflated. If you didn't own, you fell behind. Bitcoin, a code project on a forum, was the philosophical opposite of that. No discretion, no central switch, no rescues. By mid-2009, the first miners started running nodes. You could mine thousands of Bitcoin with a normal laptop. They were worthless. But to the early believers, value wasn't the point. Principle was. In 2010, the first real transaction took place. A programmer bought 2 pizzas for 10,000 BTC. The date, May 22nd, became legend. Pizza Day. The legend grew. People started asking, who is Satoshi? Speculation swirled. Was it a government project? A rogue developer from the NSA? A genius from Japan? A collective of cypherpunks? Satoshi's writing style was calm, polite, deliberate, British spelling, careful logic. Then, in 2011, they vanished. No goodbye post, no grand reveal. Just a final message. I've moved on to other things. The disappearance only deepened the myth. But between 2010 and 2012, the world kept giving Bitcoin reasons to exist. In 2010, the Eurozone crisis erupted. Greece, Ireland, and Portugal teetered under debt. Riots broke out in Athens. Unemployment soared above 25%. The European Central Bank faced an impossible choice: print or perish. It printed. Inflation anxiety spread across the continent. Savers in Germany and France started quietly looking for hedges. Gold spiked. Bitcoin's price, still tiny, doubled, tripled, then crashed, then doubled again. Volatility was a feature, not a bug. In 2011, new players entered. Wikileaks. When major payment processors, Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal, cut off donations to the organization under government pressure, Wikileaks turned to Bitcoin. It was unstoppable money for an unstoppable idea. Satoshi begged them not to. Please don't bring attention to Bitcoin yet. But the genie was out. Wikileaks began accepting Bitcoin. Overnight, the world saw what censorship-resistant finance meant. Governments could freeze bank accounts. They couldn't freeze code. That same year, Bitcoin hit $1 for the first time, then $30, then crashed to $2. It was a preview of every crypto cycle to come. Hype, mania, collapse, repeat. But behind the chaos, infrastructure was forming. There were no rules, no KYC, no security, just usernames, passwords, and blind trust. It worked until it didn't. Meanwhile, in 2011 and 2012, the Western world's confidence still hadn't fully recovered. Banks were stronger on paper, but weaker in reputation. Every time a new scandal hit, LIBOR rigging, money laundering fines, bonus scandals, Bitcoin's ethos hardened. And beyond the West, the lessons were harsher. In Iceland, the entire banking system collapsed in 2008. By 2010, Icelanders were still paying for foreign debts they never made. Bitcoin forums in Reykjavik lit up with new users. In Cyprus, whispers began about potential bail-ins, where depositor funds could be seized to rescue banks. That would happen publicly in 2013, but the groundwork was laid years earlier. Savers saw the direction of travel. 2012 brought a strange calm. Markets recovered. The S&P 500 climbed again. Politicians declared victory. But under the surface, nothing fundamental had changed. Debt was higher. Interest rates were lower. Central banks were the market now. And in that quiet, Bitcoin matured. The network got stronger. The hash rate climbed exponentially. What started as a PDF was now an organism. Between 2008 and 2012, the world went from too big to fail to too complex to fix. It was an era of broken confidence. Governments rescued the system but couldn't repair belief. People saw their pensions halved, their savings diluted, their taxes funding the very institutions that had failed them. And somewhere in that chaos, an anonymous coder offered a quiet rebellion. A ledger that couldn't lie, a currency that couldn't inflate beyond its code, a network that didn't care who you were, only whether your math checked out. Even now, historians debate whether Bitcoin's timing was coincidence or prophecy. Was it simply the next evolution of cryptography? Or was it born out of disgust with the 2008 rescue playbook? The idea that some institutions were immortal and everyone else was expendable. Look at the Genesis block again. That embedded newspaper headline wasn't random. It was a warning label. It was the date stamp of a civilization that had lost faith in its own accounting. Bitcoin wasn't created to destroy banks. It was created so people could survive them. For the next few years, Bitcoin would drift in the margins, a curiosity for coders, a punchline for pundits, a tool for the desperate. But by 2012, it had crossed the line from experiment to movement. Governments started whispering about regulation. Banks began research teams. Academics published papers. The flame had caught. Looking back, the timeline feels almost scripted. 2008, collapse. 2009, creation. 2010, proof of life. 2011, confrontation. 2012, consolidation. Each year, the same question echoed louder. Can the system survive itself? If you lived through that period, you remember the feeling, the ambient fear that maybe nobody was really in charge. You remember the news graphics counting down to the next bailout vote. You remember the words liquidity crisis, credit freeze, toxic assets. You remember looking at your payslip and realizing your savings were shrinking while the Dow recovered. That feeling, that quiet betrayal, is what Bitcoin bottled. By the end of 2012, the network had processed millions of transactions. Developers were building wallets, explorers, payment processors. The price hovered around $12, mainstream media barely noticed. But in back rooms and IRC channels, people knew. The system had reached escape velocity. Bitcoin was no longer an idea. It was a fact. In the final emails between early contributors, one line stands out. It might make sense just to get some in case it catches on. That sentence aged like prophecy. Because it wasn't just money that changed between 2008 and 2012. It was trust. Trust in institutions, in banks, in politics, in the promise that someone smarter was steering the ship. Bitcoin didn't ask for that trust. It replaced it with code. And maybe that's why it still resonates today. When governments print trillions, when banks stumble again, when markets quake under the same old leverage, people remember that somewhere out there, beyond the headlines, beyond the policies, a network is still quietly ticking every 10 minutes, exactly as it was designed to do in 2009. No CEO, no rescue plan, no edits, just math, consensus, and time. By 2012, Satoshi was gone. The world had moved on, but his creation hadn't. It kept running, line by line, block by block, proof that belief can rebuild itself in code. The institutions that failed in 2008 would rebuild too. Some would reform, some would repeat. But nothing could erase the fact that during the worst financial storm in generations, a silent experiment was born. And it worked. So when people ask why Bitcoin exists, don't start in 2025 with price charts and ETFs. Start in 2008. Start with the night Lehman fell, the panic in the streets, the money conjured from nothing, and the quiet question left hanging over it all. What if next time, there is no backstop? Because that's when one anonymous figure decided the answer wasn't another bailout. It was another system. And that's how, between 2008 and 2012, in the ashes of trust, Bitcoin was born.